The Dead Pair Podcast is brought to you by Elite Shotgun. They stand behind you. And is fueled by Fiocchi.
Welcome to the Dead Pair Podcast. Coming in hot with everything you want to hear about sporting clays.
Ben Hustway.
Each short of blind person would have to fight 14 kangaroos.
Let's get Anthony on the phone.
You're making a big mistake, okay?
Yeah. We're talking Gianna Santo tonight.
Well, I have something, but I don't know how much everyone's going to like it.
I was not ready for that.
With your hosts, Jason Rambo.
You just didn't want my wife to edit something else you did.
And Sean Alley.
You gotta keep it PG-13, man.
Often imitated, but never duplicated. It's the Dead Pair Podcast. And now, it's showtime.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back for another Scoop segment. Got some interesting topics we're going to cover tonight on targets. Chad Roberts is having some technical difficulties. He'll be back in here in just a second. But welcome to the show, Mr. Braxton Oliver, David Radulovich, and like I said, Chad Roberts will be joining us here in just a minute. You know, a lot has been talked about here lately, guys, with targets. We've kind of discussed it on a previous Scoops episode. We've lightly touched on it on the podcast. But there's been a lot of grumblings about the U.S. Open. There's Chad Roberts. There's been a lot of grumblings about the targets at the U.S. Open. And then, Braxton, you and I had a conversation at Ohio State. And you had an interesting take on the targets there and what they should be for us versus, you know, regional.
I mean, the Ohio State, the targets are a lot of fun. I certainly enjoyed them. Yeah, I can hear you. Breaking up a little bit. I thought the targets of the Ohio State were fun. They were very enjoyable. I did think they were a little on the softer side. But really, I mean, he had 16 stations. The red course, I felt like only had one hard station and one other challenging target. So that left you with 29 other targets. I would like to have seen maybe one or two more a little tougher. The blue course, I thought was very good for a state shoot. I think he had some better shoe pairs, a little more testier shoe pairs, not really anything over the top. But I felt like the level of difficulty was more even across the board on blue than it was red.
What about you, Chad? You were there and shot those targets. What did you think?
I thought they did a great job on Friday for like as a person that shot a lot of state shoots. I think it's nice when a setter they don't set it crazy hard, just to kind of get you warmed up with what you're going to expect, or not necessarily what you're going to expect, but what you're going to, just the lay of the land, just what you're going to see and things like that. So I thought the prelim was great. I thought the red course was very similar, but with, like Braxton said, a couple of added, one station that was super hard, if you want to consider it super hard, on that level, and one or two other targets that had a little zest to them. I have to kind of step back because of my experience and how long I've been shooting. I would say that for the majority of the people there that I talked to, they thought the red course was perfect, and they thought the blue course was really over the top for what their level was, what they've not seen at that state level. Now, for me, I misjudged everything on Sunday, and I had some mechanical issues so that I was dealing with, as you know, Jason, and I wasn't really in it. I tried my ass off in the middle of the course, and I ran a bunch of stations, but it was just at the beginning and the end, I got smoked. I was actually out there teaching for a week, so I was able to reshoot the blue course outside the two towers because they took them down. And let's say I was to run those two towers and what I shot on the rest of the course, I would have shot a 94. But if you take the 5 away, I missed between station 1 and station 7. I missed 3 on 1 and 2 on the other. I would have probably, that was an 88. And that was about what I shot an 88 on Saturday. So, that's kind of how I looked at it. 89, 88 was probably a pretty good average score for something that's pretty decent. And, anybody who was shooting really good was going to shoot between a 91 and a 90. And I was right on, because everybody was floating between that 93 and 90, that high number, for the top 5 guys. So, yeah, I thought other than that, I mean, you can sit there and say they're easy, but nobody shot 100 straight. And that's one thing. The other thing I would say is I agree with Braxton, and we talked about this. I didn't think it was boring, but we've been shooting such phenomenal targets for the whole year. We went to the US Open. We had the English Worlds. If you got to go to the FITAS World, and if you were to go to that Northbrook FITAS shoot before the Worlds, or in regionals leading up and after the Worlds, we've been shooting some extremely good, hard, regional, national level product, out there. And I think that was, when you come off that, you were just like, and then you add 16 stations. Most of the stations were running, 10 stations to, 15 max, and we're running 16. So it got a little monotonous for me. I felt a couple times throughout the weekend, but again, we all have to shoot it, and I didn't shoot very well. So there was my take.
David, I'm going to lead into you here in just a minute, but I want to ask Braxton something first. Braxton, when you talk to people about targets, they talk about hard and easy. Well, my opinion, my worthless opinion, is that no target is easy until you've hit it, right? But everybody has a different opinion on what's hard and easy. What do you think the breakdown should be from like World Championship, Nationals, US Open, regionals, and then state level? Where do you think the difficulty level, and call it like an HOA number, where do you think they should be? Or how would you grade them? Let's put it that way. How would you grade them?
Starting with the World Championship, I feel like they should probably be, I think an average for any course at the World Championship should be 8.5 or better on a scale of 1 to 10.
Okay.
Our US Open Nationals, I would like to see, right there, that 7 to 8 number.
Okay, so I asked that question to get to this one.
Mm-hmm.
What did you put Richard Fault, and this is where David's I'm going to throw him in here after you answer. Where did you put Richard Fault's targets at the US Open? Where on that scale?
Overall, I'll put him about an 8.5 to a 9. He had a couple stations in there that were good. If he threw a few more in there, it would have been
right there.
Real high, yeah.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of the reason why I asked that is because there's been a lot of complaints into the NSCA about those targets, and people are grumbling about it. So now, David, this is where I want to bring you in. You actually coached there. You had lessons there all week after, and they actually left those targets set up. Please don't lose this, David. We want you to summarize here. But tell everyone what you were telling me about how you went back and you were working with your students throughout the week on Tuesday, Wednesday, and you actually got to shoot a little bit. What was your take initially, and then what did you come away with after going back and look at those targets? Because you had an interesting take on that too.
Yeah, I to make it as quick as possible, it's a pretty common thing for people. Well, it's a pretty rare thing, honestly, for people to shoot a major championship like that, and then be able to, either shoot on or teach on the targets that you shot in that shoot immediately afterwards. It's not a very common experience, and but most of the time when people do experience that, it's either generally because you didn't get a chance to shoot the tournament, but you go and shoot the targets afterwards. And a big comment most of the time people make is like, man, those targets weren't really that hard. I don't understand why I don't really understand why everybody's saying that they were so challenging, or man, I could have won that shoot, that type of thing. Like, dang, I should have entered it because I shot so well when I went and shot it on Monday or Tuesday. But I can tell you that me personally, if I'm being, so I am very biased towards Richard's targets. And so I was really enjoying them. They were really hard. I was having a lot of fun. I thought that they were possibly too hard for the shoot until I was a few days into teaching. On Monday morning, when I started teaching, I was absolutely thoroughly convinced that because of the feedback that everybody got at Northbrook about how challenging the targets were, that they went and they changed all the birds. Like, I literally thought, like, these guys, they came, they brought the spring down, they moved the traps further in, like they turned the bases in to throw targets closer. And I was so convinced that I was asking the other guys that were coaching there if that's what they thought too. Everybody that I asked said that they thought that was the case. And the people that I asked were Wendell, Brandon, who else was there? I forget, someone else that I saw teaching there. And I was thoroughly convinced for probably 2 days. After going through all the targets and then actually getting to a point where during one of the lessons I was giving, I was kind of teaching a little bit about planning. And I was kind of going through the plans I was making for the match to kind of, narrate the level of detail that you need to have in your planning. I kind of started to realize, you know what, man, the lines that I planned for the match, where the targets are starting and where they're landing, these are all exactly the same dang targets I shot for during the whole U.S. Open. And I literally thought that they were easy. Like, they went from me being, I was interpreting them as being super challenging, really hard, to man, these, I kind of wish they had the targets that we shot during the shoot, because these are kind of easy. These are way too soft. It was exactly the same targets. Unless you want me to, Jason, I can go into the reason why that is the case. But that's a big thing that happens for all of us when we're in a match, physiologically, neurologically, emotionally, visually, all the things that are being elevated and messed around with in your literal brain chemistry while we're competing changes the way that your eyes work, long story short, and you see targets, you see worse, you see less data over the same amount of time, which makes things look faster, it makes them look further away. And your perception of things is different. That's what, I completely failed at that at the shoot. Most of the people that I asked if they thought the targets changed failed at that during the shoot. Look at, not to call him out, but he wouldn't mind. Brandon Powell didn't shoot that well. I didn't shoot that well. Wendell Cherry didn't shoot that well. If I look at my data from my Whoop band, it's very evident to me that, physiologically I was pretty elevated, and that was hugely affecting my interpretation of things.
Chad, you take a lot of your students out on a course after a tournament out there in California, and I'm sure you understand what David's talking about. Let's start with this. What was your interpretation of the targets at Northbrook for the U.S. Open?
I actually enjoyed them very much. So I shot one of the courses really poorly, and it happened to be the course that everybody finished on in the Super Squad. I shot it first thing Friday morning at 8 a.m. and that course kicked my ass, and I was like literally what David's saying. It's like everything looks so damn hard, and I know it wasn't. I could tell the difference as a coach. I knew it wasn't, but I couldn't get myself to get calmed down enough to really plan better and make better shots. And when I went home that night, went to the Airbnb and actually went to dinner with Richard Faulds that night for 2 or 3 minutes, and we talked about it for a brief moment. And I went to dinner with him and Brandon Powell, and we all talked about exactly what David's talking about. Is like, man, they seemed really hard. And he thought Beretta was really hard. And, so it was one of those things where when I came back on Saturday, I really changed the way I thought I was going to shoot it. And I actually shot the Beretta better than a lot of the top guys did, which happened to be the one that they all started on the day before. And I was looking at my score compared to those guys, and I was like, wow, I'm right in the mix now with those guys. But I had such a poor performance on the first day, and vice versa. I saw the same thing when the scores came in off of the pro squads. Their second days were either at the same level or a little more elevated because they, people got into that race mode, and but I thought the targets were fine. I did not like the FETAS targets, but that was because, and I've talked to Brandon or Braxton about this, and Brandon, and I even talked to Theo Ribbs about it, and we all, Theo told me he would have not been able to shoot the 80, whatever. I think he shot an 89 or whatever. He would have not been able to shoot that 89 on FETAS if he would have done what I did, which is I shot all 100 straight right in a row. And by doing that, it was relentless. I didn't have a break. I couldn't get my head wrapped around what was happening. And I shot that 76 on Tuesday, and I looked the scores, and Braxton's leading with, I think, would you shoot an 81 or something like that, you Braxton?
86.
And you were leading for most of the weekend, and I was like
I think I shot it on Tuesday and led it till Friday.
Yeah, and I was sitting in 10th place with a 76 for most of the week. And I was like, so when I talked to Theo about it, when he shot his score, and then they all split up their stuff, and they told me, again, I think they could probably perform whether they shoot all 100 or not, but Theo was saying, man, that would have been really hard to do that score if I would have shot it straight through like you did. So there's something to that, planning your shoot and things like that. But I see it all the time. I do it constantly to this day. I'll go shoot a score like a 93 on a local course, thinking it's pretty hard, or even an 89 locally. And then I'll go back out the next day with a buddy, and I'll reshoot the course for score, and I'll shoot 5 to 8 birds to 10 birds higher the next day. And that's exactly what David's talking about. And I think everybody goes through it. I get a lot of people that go back, man, those targets weren't hard. And I'm like, well, how did you practice them? They're like, well, I shot singles because I didn't have a person with me, and I shot all the singles really well. And I'm like, okay, let's put them together and see what happens. And it's the same thing. Then you start seeing the breakdown of their games and stuff where, they can't do the transitions very good or whatever. And, you and I've talked about that before, Jason, when things look good. If you get that guy that says, or that girl that says, man, I could kill everything if they were just singles, right? They'd shoot 100 straight. But you add them as a true pair, you add the actual concept of going from kill point to break point and moving with the targets and stuff, and it throws them all off.
Yeah. So. Question for you, Braxton. David, real quick, can you bring the chat up so we can see that?
Yeah, there's nothing in the chat. I did try to do it, but it's like skewed, and I don't want to have to rework it right now. There's nothing. It's basically just people saying that they like the logo. Good evening. Audio is great. That type of stuff. Since you can
see the comments, let us know if somebody has a comment or question about these targets.
Yeah.
So Braxton, back to you. You set targets at your club, and I know you like them spicy. You and I have talked about that. You like hard targets. You like, in other words, distance. You like some speed in your targets. And I know that you do some coaching too. So have you seen this with your students, like going back out after a tournament and work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people, like David said, I think what happens is they let the wow factor of targets, or that little bit of pressure, anxiety, what do you want to call it, on top of the wow factor, kind of throws people off a little bit instead of just seeing targets for what they really are. They see a target that has a little bit of, not as much profile with a little bit of spring on it, but they forget that it's 35 yards and you can see it for 100 yards, from trap to where it hits the ground. And a lot of people just kind of let that wow factor get in the way of really reading targets and understanding them. And when you go back after the fact and look at them, you don't have that pressure. The wow factor's gone. They look totally different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I'm good friends with Jake Spangler. And, you know, of course, I work on the board, the OSCA board with Sean Spindell from Hillendale. And I get why they try to get their target setters to stay within a certain realm because, let's face it, 60% of the attendees there are Ohio State shooters, right? Only 40% is from out of state. And it's a hard thing. Since I've started setting targets a couple years ago, I've noticed you want to try and appease everyone, and you can't do it. I mean, you got the guy that's just starting out that can barely break 40 out of 100, and then you got, Brandon Powell was at our Ohio State shoot, and he's known. And Braxton, you're known for shooting 100 straights, and so is Brandon. So you kind of want to have that difficulty level to where maybe Braxton's at a 96, 97, but you're not killing the guy in D class, So it's a delicate balance. I mean, and really, actually, all four of us on here set targets. But David, what's your take on that? I mean, how do you? What's your? I'm trying to ask this so David doesn't go off in the weeds on us. So, no offense, David, but what's your take on that, David? On setting targets like that?
I think it's not too difficult. Essentially, if you coach a lot, you understand what is hard with a target. You understand what movement is challenging for people to make, and as opposed to what targets are hard for people to hit. And so if I am going to set a course where, I do it all the time, where I don't unfortunately get the chance to set targets at major championships, although I would really love to. Normally I'm setting stuff for targets for tournaments about the size of like a state shoot and stuff like that. And so I don't have a lot of pros come to the events, but there are some. And I don't. Number one, I'm not trying to set a target that. None of the targets I'm going to set are hard because they look hard or they're far or they're hard to hit. Everything I'm going to try to do is make you miss based off of a very complex movement, make you miss because of a visual perception thing where the way that you're interpreting what the bird is doing is going to elevate your emotional state, which is going to decrease the ability for you to use your eyes the way that you would like, which is going to decrease your ability to physically make the movement that you want to have. And so what ends up happening is when you set courses like that, there's a lot of shots where less skilled shooters can hit, but because they just really don't know what they're doing, but a more skilled shooter will have a more challenging time with that specific, presentation or bird or something like that. And so, it is possible on every course that I like to set to shoot 100 straight, but to do it, you have to be mechanically and technically flawless. And so generally what ends up happening is you'll have, high score around 90 to 91 or 92. And any random guy can post up have a 4 or 5 bird lead and shoot 96, 97, 98. But it kind of does this to the scores. The lower guys end up shooting better scores and the higher guys shoot worse scores because generally a lot of the time that you have, a lot of masterclass shooters, they shoot good scores because they shoot a lot, not because they're good at shooting. And then the lower class guys generally tend to take a lot of instruction, generally tend to, they're trying to get better. And so it ends up working, it's a good outcome, in my opinion, to do that. It can be very frustrating for the higher class shooters. But I think that's a good way to set a course.
Well, this is kind of a unique one here because we have 3 top-level shooters that are all coaches and that have all set targets or, set targets regularly. So I'm going to work backwards from what I got on my screen here. But Braxton, I want to start with you. So if you have a student that comes to you and says, "Man, these targets are just killing me, man. They're just beating me up," or "I don't like these targets, or they're too hard, or whatever." What? There's really a lot of things you could tell them. My first thought would be that, hey, you're going to learn something by shooting these targets, even if you're missing. What do you try to tell your students in a situation like that? Well, I'm just saying, like, if the course in general, they feel that the target sets is hard, or it's hard for them, what advice do you give them? Because I'm sure there's some intermediate shooters watching this or listening to this that, hey, what can I learn from this if I go to an event and the targets just seem like way above my level?
They, just in general, they should probably not take it to heart, that they, got beat up. They should definitely challenge themselves to go try to shoot more of them or come back and reshoot those same targets. Most of the time when people come to me, I'm willing to go out with anyone. I mean, even if it's available, I'll go out with them right then and we'll look at it, talk about it, try to get them to understand what the target was doing and maybe what they were doing wrong.
What about you, Chad? I know you've had some students come to you that have expressed that. How do you work with them on that?
Before I answer real quick, Gramps, what's up, dude? Tony Lisa, he said he's an open class. I think Tony Lisa is a guy, but maybe it's Lisa and Tony. I don't know what it is, but hey guys, whoever you are, they said I'm a C-class shooter and they thought the Winchester course was hard. And my question back to them was, why did that seem harder to you than the others? And I haven't got an answer back. So you guys, if you listen, I am on the chat. I am typing and asking questions. So holler back at us, give us some stuff so we can pull it up either on the screen or at least talk about it. Back to your answer. Basically, I look at it like this. Again, most students, when they first start, they have no idea how to even shoot a gun. And I just try to get them to hit 50%, and I have them work on all the angles when they're training if they're taking lessons from me. From there, it progresses into they can hit all the 5 or 6 trajectory of targets as a single. They're pretty good, but they have a hard time putting it together. Then we work on that. And then there's the guys and gals will come and say, look, I've never even seen that target. And before we go down the path of talking about, like, did you really, did you not hit it because you had no idea what you're doing? Like, you're someone from out west that goes out to Arizona and they shoot a driven target over your head because they have the ability to do it over there. That's obviously a target they've never seen before. So first and foremost, if they have a good solid plan or like some concept of shooting, I basically make them swear on somebody. Like, did you do exactly what you, because if you didn't, if there was any part of that plan that you did and that you said you were going to do and you didn't do it, then, I can't even really say that I can assess them unless they can swear on their mom, basically, that and I've had this conversation with you, Jason, where we've been shooting and you've like, I'm like, did you see what you're going to do? And you said, no, then don't tell me anything. I'm not going to keep going until in your heart of hearts that you did exactly what you planned. From there, then that way we can make a plan of how to change it and how to address it so you can make those self-assessments, really. So you can do it on your own. And if you don't have the skill level, then teach you that skill so you have that tool in your bag. But that's usually where it comes down from for me. That's how I handle it.
What about you, David? What's your answer to that question?
Do
I need to repeat the question?
Yeah, repeat the question.
So if you have a student that comes to you that, hey, man, this event I went to was just the targets were hard all the way across the board. I felt like they were above my skill level. What advice do you give to them going into the next tournament or the next day or whatever at a big event where the targets are challenging like that? I mean, an intermediate shooter that's listening to this would love the advice from all of you. And so what do you tell your students?
I don't really that honestly is a pretty fair question. It's a good question. And I think from the beginning of teaching my students, you know, I kind of almost instill in them, there's not really a focus on difficulty of the bird or score. You know, especially with the whole shoot analysis sheet thing that I have. And I very early on tried to get them to essentially buy into, you know, really valuing the formula that is, you know, input of work equals, you know, the output of whatever expectation of performance that you have. And I'm trying to have their focus on the input of work and what they're doing and how much effort they're putting in. And I want them to grade themselves on, very similar to what Chad said, you know, like, did you do all of the things that you're supposed to be doing? And so I really don't honestly think that my students, you know, hard course or not, I never really ever get asked questions like that from my students. You know, it's mainly always talking about, I'm so excited. I shot, 13 birds less today, but like the course was way harder and I did everything I was trying to do. And, it's mainly more like that. And I think that's the way that it should be. The difficulty of birds when you're shooting a harder course, really the thing that you need to be able to do is understand, how is that going to influence your emotional state? How is that going to influence your perception of what's happening? And how will that change what you're trying to do? Is that going to flip you into being more on a defensive state of mind, so to speak, of being cautious and trying to be too precise in things? Or is it going to pull your attention from focusing on the execution of your mechanics and your planning and all of that stuff, and just being consciously self-aware of the fact that that it may be visually distracting, but it's still just movement.
Marty said in the comments, the true pair of bat station on the CTV course was a wild pair, not something I've experienced, and I missed those targets big time. Well, Marty honestly joined the club. I mean, even the interview we did with Anthony at the end, that guy won the U.S. Open. He talked about how challenging that station was. So, Chad, looks like you got a reply here from Tony. Do you want to address that?
Yeah, he was talking about I'm trying to think of which one on the hill, on the true pair. So that would have been probably, I'm guessing, on the Beretta course, right? I'm not sure. Tony, let us know which course you're talking about, because there's a couple different ones. But true pairs are, sometimes it's a technique where you have to shoot them fast, depending on the coach, I should say. There's no right or wrong way, but sometimes you have to shoot targets a lot quicker than you're normally used to shooting them, just so you can control the second target or have a chance at getting on the second target. And then vice versa, if you take your time and really kumbaya and the first target, really work it, you end up having to just kind of spot shot the second shot, and you may not have a good sync, or your visual acuity on the target kind of goes out the window. So, some of that is on purpose from the setter, because they want to pull your eyes off a target. They want to test your skill level in a speedier fashion but still giving you the opportunity to hit it. And maybe, depending on the level you are, you're not supposed to hit it, to be honest with you. As a C-class shooter, you can Dutch 25% of your targets and still probably be in the lead to win, So, I've always said that. Remember, Jason, I've said that to you. I'm like, look, man, you can miss 25 targets and still shoot a 75. Yeah. Do you want to zero out your first 6 states? Do this, and then run the rest of the course. So I look at it from a number standpoint. Sometimes you just try to, if I have a lower class person, I'm just looking for them to hit 50%, 60% of the targets and do their best. And anything they can get above that is just adding to the score and building a game. So, but yeah, that's pretty interesting about that. Marty said he hit 1 on that station. I zeroed it. So, that Batu station, I was first up. I didn't have a squad in front of me to watch how they shot it. I had no idea which target to take first. I decided to go Billy Big Balls and take the front target first and shoot it off the arm. As soon as it opened up, and I missed it, and I was like, oh, that other target ain't that far away, and then I missed that. And I was like, well, crap, now I don't know what to do. So I stuck to my guns because I didn't do what I planned to do, so I kept doing it, and I only had 3 pairs to figure it out. So those 3 pairs went to a 0. That's just the way it goes.
Well, I kind of thought that come up. Trevor Shanahan said, y'all need to hit on the hot topic of the day. What are your thoughts on the black rim target? I don't know if you guys saw that or not on Facebook. Zach had a post about the orange dome black rim target, and I'll tell you this much. I was never a fan of that target until I took Anthony's target setting class. And he explained how well that works when you have a target that's going from the trees into the sky and then back down again, like in the Shondell's situation. It works perfect because you got the orange to see it coming through the trees. You have the black ring to see it in the sky. I've always been a fan of the all orange target, but as somebody with bad eyes, I 100% appreciate that black ring target because once it gets in the sky, an orange target on a blue sky, I lose it. It gets fuzzy. It looks like it's got a little halo around it. It's just weird looking. So,
well, think of David when it goes in the sky, he turns into Stevie Wonder.
No, that target's actually the best target for me. Right. It's my favorite bird. I like, not only is it better for visibility, but it's also better to kind of mess with people. You can throw it kind of edgy in the trees and make it look a lot smaller. You can do the same thing in the sky and make it look really smaller. You know, it really it freaks people out, amps them up, and they'll very high probability to shoot too fast, amp up, misinterpret what it's doing because of that. I think that's the best target in the game.
I think it's probably the most universal target in the game.
Yeah.
What about you, Braxton? You set a lot of targets when it comes to that orange dome black ring. You like that target?
Well, like everybody else in the sky, it's great. From trees to sky or dark background to sky, it's great. Black ring and all sky, great. But being in the southeast, throwing them in all trees, not from one background to another, just low in all trees or in the shadows, I really hate that target.
You need an all orange for that one.
You know what's interesting about my color?
Well, then it turns in
like when I have if there's shaded trees and stuff, I can I don't see the weird strobing, but also like black is easily visible to me inside of like dark shaded green areas. And it's almost like makes it easier for me to see. It's crazy.
It's got to be your color blindness that messes.
Yeah, it's what it is.
Because black. It's because black isn't a color, bro.
And this is. I want to hear Chad's take on this. And real quick backstory. I'll never forget. He came out here to Ohio for a couple years before I went to California, and kept telling me how different the sky is. Forget the greenery. We know it's way greener here. But he kept telling me how different the sky was in this June haze that they get. And also, I'm like, dude, you're psychedelic California. Something's going on here. I went out there, and it is flat amazing to me when a target is in the sky, how much different it looks than here. Same yardage, same height. It looks totally different. I can't even begin to. You have to experience it.
If you throw an all orange target in our sky, it will literally disappear. That's why it's really hard when you shoot bunker here. If you get the target above the trees, and you're shooting an all orange, international target, they'll disappear. It kind of goes along with the whole Purkinje effect of that dusk feel. And you guys have all shot in dusk and shoot offs where they'll throw targets really hard to see. It's the same concept, but we get it during the midday. And so, there's companies that have developed glasses to see in that. But one thing that can help with that is a black rim target, which we see a lot out here. We throw a lot of them, unless it's of course in the desert, and it's an all black target because of the blue sky. But we see them all the time. So when I saw that, if anything on that whole thing, there is a disadvantage when the Euros come here or we go there because of the different size targets. They do fly different outside of colors and stuff. In reality, if somebody was to send a boatload of white flyer 108s over there, they'd catch up really quick on how to shoot both styles of targets, because we don't throw enough internationals over here, in my opinion. So if we were going to, if you're going to go compete on the world stage, I think that part should be equal, both sides. So we have an option, because I think that's I think that could be some of the reason why some of these guys at the Euro, everybody, obviously the top guys are always going to prevail when they prevail. But I was with Delmas, and he lost by a couple birds, and I watched the birds he missed, and I don't think he would have missed them if there were a different bird that he's used to shooting. So I don't know.
Interesting take. David, you're awful quiet over there, which is rare for you.
Well, I fixed the chat thing, but I was also just listening to the conversation. I think it's kind of like weird to me to hear you guys talk about this, because I just don't experience that, like any weird variability in lighting. Lighting to me, there's only one type of lighting that really kills me, and that's Curtis calls it milk toast lighting, which it's like more of the Pacific Northwest thing, where basically we had it one day at Jack Links this year, where there is sun out but no shadows, because of, I don't really know what causes that, but that's
the ocean, David.
The ocean.
That's the onshore flow mixing with the offshore flow, which gives you that gloom, but it's sun shining out and there's no shadows.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's not bright either.
No, it's not bright. Yeah, it's very it's like a dark, gloomy-ish kind of thing.
Yes, and that's the June. We call it June gloom out here, because that's when it hits heavy and it burns off at 11 o'clock every day. And I can take a picture. It looks like smog, but basically what it is just that haze that sits around all day, and it's from the ocean. And Jack Links, I think, is close enough that it could get some of that, or it could just because of the could be from another effect from humidity too, from the ground to heat up in the air.
Yeah, that could be. It's weird, because I lived in Florida for a while, and I never saw that like that. I don't know it. But yeah, that's the only thing to me, that's the only weird lighting that I get. I don't get strobing things and shadows. I don't. I will get like an orange certain. To me, basically, if the bird has zero shadows on it, and it's totally perpendicular to the sun, then that can sometimes cause issues with me with certain colors and backgrounds, because I'm not getting any shaded areas in it. But yeah.
Hey guys, Jason and I really love bringing this podcast to you week after week, but it does take a lot of time and a lot of resources to make it happen. And without these very special people, we couldn't do it on a week-by-week basis. Hey, Toby Tomplay, help these guys remember who they need to support.
Yes, sir. They can support Fiocchi USA, Elite Shotguns, Vero Beach Clay Shooting Sports, Score Chaser, Odo Pro Technologies, Rhino Chokes, RE Ranger, Taconic Distillery, and Atlas Trap Company.
I want to actually switch it before I go. I'm going to get off this. I have to go, everybody. Got to go to a movie premiere for my company I work for. So anyway, one thing that I think is a hot topic that you guys haven't touched on, but it's been coming around more and more lately with some of the top shooters is, and I know David and Braxton both shoot different, I believe, is 1 1/8 over 1 ounce. I know Anthony went back to 1 1/8 this year because he said his gun, even though it was lighter, kicked less, so he was able to do so. He went back to his standard load of a 1 1/8, 1250, 1 1/8. I talked to Blaze at Ohio State, and his dad. Actually, I talked to his dad at the U.S. Open, and he is a pretty big proponent of 1 ounce, just like I was back in 2018 and 19 when I made my switch after the PSCA deers from 1 1/8 to 1 ounce. And Blaze has went to 1 1/8, and his scores have jumped. And we all know that it shouldn't matter because we shoot world championships with FITAS, which is a 1 ounce load, and high scores are still high there. However, there was a conversation between Anthony and a particular person. I won't name the person because they might not want to have me say it, but they asked Anthony what is the other reason besides that, the gun kicks less, so it feels like you can get away with it. And the answer was emphatically because everybody's shooting 98s. So that's why. So I'm going to let the forum go on that one. And I think there's something to it because I shot with Brandon after Ohio State. We both were teaching out there for a week, and we got to shoot. And I got to shoot a bunch of 1 1/8 shells while I was there, and I have not shot them since 2018. And I'm telling you, it was, I have to say, with the ported barrels and everything I got going on with the way my guns balance, it fit, didn't have any extra recoil, but those targets were absolutely rolling those 70, 80 yards because we set some targets out there. And it was Brandon just saying, see, this is why. Now, I shot some with some 1 ounce because we had some and I hit them, but the breaks were a hell of a lot harder with the 1 1/8. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't, but on my way out right now, I think that's a big subject that keeps getting turned around. I know some guys say it, I'll shoot a 1 1/4 if it was offered. But my question to the crowd and the people out there before I get off is, if scores matter, and the high scores are so close together, and we're not using powder targets, we're not using flash targets, and we're kind of at the mercy of these sometimes not the best eyes for a person scoring us, our referees. I'm not saying they're bad or good. I love them, but sometimes, we're all shooting for that 1 or 2 extra targets. Is that with that harder hitting, bigger pellet, lots more pellets, a for sure break will look a lot better than a not so sure break with a 1 ounce load, maybe. Do the extra pellets give you that extra bird, or can they give you the extra bird? What do you think about that? I know you're going to get a whole bunch of people jumping on here saying one way is better, but the facts remain this way. The guys dominating the sport right now are all shooting 1 1/8. That's all I got to say. I love you all, and peace out.
Chad, before you peel out, I just got to call you out publicly. You still haven't signed up for the Dead Pair Blast yet in December, so get your butt in gear.
Oh,
man.
Crap. That's right. I do. And take somebody out shooting and make sure you put a gun in their hand and have a good time with them and make them take a tournament so they can learn how to make them play all the options because I need to make more money and rock and roll, baby.
Rock and roll, son.
You guys are awesome. Thank you. Rock on, guys.
Good to see you.
See you, bye. Yep. Take care. See you, Braxton.
Adios.
See you, Chad.
All right, guys. There's a lot of questions rolling in. David, or Braxton, do you want to take some of these? Here's one for you, Braxton. What's your favorite type of target to set?
Big towers.
Towers?
Who wouldn't love to have a 100-foot tower and put something way out there?
Yeah, dude, Braxton. I set a tournament in New York every year, and a friend of mine owns this tower company. They do like basically cell towers and stuff in the area, and he brings in. We get 2 towers. One, I think we had 170 footer on a FITASC. It was either 170 or 150 footer, and then 110 or something like that. Or maybe it was a 75 and a 125. I don't remember, something crazy. But I maxed out the one, the big one on the FITASC, and I threw a full spring bat two off of it, and you know how like when you lean a bat two towards the plate and make it really flat, but barely like a few degrees, it'll make a big S in the air. It was the coolest line I mean, it went for miles.
170-foot tower. You are mean, David.
I actually did it that way because I had the tower
was 60 yards in the air.
Yeah, it legitimately was. I think I saw Jake. Oh, it was okay. So JJ is here. It was a 135 and an 85, so 135 footer. JJ, was that last year's towers, or did we have the same size both years? Let me know that. But I had to do that for that layout because I had the two layouts I was using it on were pretty far apart, and I had the tower in the middle. So it was so high up in full spring because basically it came in. I threw it like as a driven on peg 1, a crosser on peg 2, and an overhead on peg 3. And so like it actually wasn't that hard of a shot. It just looked crazy because it took like 3 to 5 seconds to get to you. But I'm with Braxton on that. Big towers are the most fun thing to set.
So if I'm going to answer that question, my comment would be, it depends on who's shooting it. If it's David that's shooting it, I'm setting 15 stations of incoming crows.
I'll never hit
one. Okay, so we're going to bounce around here a little bit. I want to catch up on some of these questions. Todd says, more important, 8s or 7.5s, 1 ounce, and 1 1/8 loads. So I don't know. I know you guys know this, but I don't know if everybody that's watching this or listening to this knows this, but a 1 ounce of 8s has the same pellet count as an 1 1/8 of 7.5s. You didn't know that, David?
Nope, don't know, don't care.
Okay. No wonder you can't hit anything. But no, did you know that, Braxton?
I knew it was close.
So an 1 1/8 of 7.5s is the same pellet count as a 1 ounce 8s. I have found love in 1 1/8 8s. Hey, look, I don't care if it's a flyer.
Son of a dog.
I don't care if it's a flyer that breaks a target in half. It's still an X on the scorecard, okay? With my eyes,
you're just throwing sand out there at him.
Hey, listen, if I can run 3 ounce 10 gauge, I'd do it, okay?
Jesus.
With my eyes, I got a chance. I did tell you about that, didn't I, David?
What?
Everybody, Braxton, you need to get in on this. I've got a great marketing idea, and I think you guys need to invest. I'm going to start a shooting school for blind people.
Oh, so, Jiminy.
Based on my scores and my performance, it'd be great. But no, so David, you're a 7.5 guy, right?
Yeah, 1 ounce, 7.5, 1,200
what
per
about
second.
You, Braxton?
For a long time, 1 1/8.
8s? Are you 1 1/8 or 1 ounce?
Shot the same thing. For a long time, I was 1 1/8. Here recently, I switched to 1 ounce.
1 ounce? Okay.
I disagree with what Brandon said. I don't necessarily think that it's. I don't make my decision on what shell to shoot based on how much pellets I'm throwing out there at it. I'm making the decision on the size load that I'm shooting based off of the level of control that I have of my gun when I shoot it. And I want to have the highest. I want my gun to not move when I pull the trigger. I would gladly give up 20, 30% of the pellets that I have to be able to have the gun feel like nothing went off. And so that's why I shoot a 1 ounce, 1,200 foot per second rose gold. Because it has no recoil. I mean, watch a slow motion video of me shooting, and my gun doesn't move. It comes straight back barely, but other than that, nothing. And I think I think that it doesn't matter the size load that you're shooting as long as that's happening. I think it's more important to be able to put a priority on the control of the gun as there is throwing pellets out there. Because if I'm not able to control my gun, but I have 50% more pellets or double the amount of pellets, it's still useless.
Yeah, I'm pretty fortunate because the rhino porting does work really well for your muzzle rise, right? I mean, I could shoot an 1.8 ounce load at 1250 and not have any more muzzle rise than I do with a 1 ounce 1250.
Yeah, I mean, when you're dealing with the level of skill of Braxton and I, we can shoot the 1 ounce. But Jason, like, I think that probably you're going to need at least 1.25 ounces or something like that. Maybe like 1600 foot per second. Maybe if you've got some orange tracing rounds, you literally will need all the help that you can get. Probably, if it's like, with the binocular cross-eyed issue that you have,
just stop. Just don't go any further. All right. Like I said, bouncing around here. Tim says, as a D-class shooter that shoots tournaments around Dallas-Fort Worth, what should I expect at the Diamond Classic? I'm going there for the experience and to have fun. Do y'all have any advice for the main? I've never shot that event. I don't know if either one of you have to comment on it.
Yeah, real quick, I'll answer Duke Durham's question. He said, why no love for 7/8 ounce? And I would say, Duke, I literally was going to switch to a 7/8 ounce this year, or in the middle of last year. I was very seriously considering the white gold 7/8 ounce, but then I was trying the rose gold, and it had less recoil than the white gold 7/8 ounce. So I like the 1 ounce rose gold, so I ended up switching that. But I don't have any problem with 7/8 ounce. I think they're awesome. I don't know. I honestly, I know something about that shoot that I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about. But I believe that the person that would know if we can talk about it is probably watching this, because I don't. If you're watching it, shoot me a text message, and because I want to talk about the targets, but I'm not really sure. I basically, long story short, to answer his question, I'm not 100% sure what to expect, even myself.
Are you going to that shoot, David?
Is that also a regional or something? Okay, so he just said that we can talk about it. So basically, Trevor Shanahan is going to be in charge of. He's going to be the manager. I'm not exactly sure. Trevor, you can say what the exact position is, but we'll be running that club during that time. So he'll be setting the targets, I believe, or at least some of them. And so, I think traditionally that shoot is very, very hard targets. I don't know. I mean, Trevor would be the perfect one to ask, because he's going to be the one in charge of the shoot. So he's here in the chat right now. We should, he can add in on that. Operations director is what it is.
All right. Like I said, we're bouncing back and forth here. We'll wait for Trevor to respond. Tim says, I just switched from 1 ounce 8s to ounce and 8 7.5, 1200 and 1250, and I've noticed a big difference in my scores. So, not everybody can be a Jedi master like you, David.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with the 1 ounce or ounce and 8 1200. To me, it's not about the size; it's about the recoil, which includes the wad. Because. How good is the gas seal? How much powder do you actually have to throw the charge out there? To throw the pellets out there as fast as you need them. 1200 is slow. 1 ounce 1200 doesn't make much movement in the gun.
Yeah.
I mean, ounce and an 8. Sorry.
These next couple comments, I'm gonna ignore you.
No, I'm looking at these guys. They say, I just go to the tournaments for this T-shirt and the steak dinners. The guy's like, me too, John.
Yeah. These next couple comments I'm going to direct towards Braxton, and then David, I want you and I to feed off of this. Sonic Rose says, target setter of one of my favorite clubs really likes building ramps for rabbits, and he can get pretty creative with them. And then John said, Braxton sets a good Jesus rabbit. You like setting that rabbit, do you, Brax?
I've actually only said it once.
Oh, really?
I said it once, but I may have gone a little over the top on it. It may have been a little further than a typical rabbit on the water probably should have been put on.
So
a lot of people around home. That one's pretty memorable for them.
Well, David, the reason why I said I wanted you to spin off of this, I think we ought to do what we talked about with all the handsets.
Oh my God.
Braxton, tell me that wouldn't be a blast. I don't know. How old are you, Braxton, if you don't mind my asking?
27.
20. You probably don't remember because this would have been.
I bet. How long have you been shooting? You've been shooting a while, though, right?
A while.
Yeah.
The whole 19, 20 years.
Yeah.
NCA 17, 16.
So were you around for the old handset traps? Any of the courses or anything?
Very young. I grew up around them, but I never.
I was
never,
talking to.
Never really got to shoot off of them much.
Oh, dang. Do you guys have any at your club?
Not anymore.
Oh,
Not anymore.
dang.
We still have a couple that we keep maybe around the barn, but we don't use them.
Yeah.
I was talking to David about how cool would it be to have a tournament where we set a course all old style, like with the pairs, the following pairs. Remember the gravity rabbit, Braxton? Did you ever see those? They actually took 2 2x6s and still just dropped the rabbit in it and it'd roll down. But this fun stuff. I mean, it could be a fun tournament. It doesn't even have to be registered. But how cool would it be to go around just set all 15 or 16 stations completely old style, all handset traps? Tell me that wouldn't be fun,
Oh, I'd love to do it.
We need to put that together.
I'd love to do it. There's
I want to. Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
That would literally be the most fun shoot. You just because you can't do. It would have to be like an invitational or just like you can't have very many people at a shoot like that. It's got to be a very small amount, And God dang, that would be the most fun tournament of the year.
Yes.
No, I think about it while we're here in Maryland. It's been a couple of years, and it might not still be there, but there was a club, I think, in Delmarva. It's still all hand thrown.
Yeah.
We stopped there a couple years ago and actually shot it. Yeah, I'd love to do that for a tournament.
Oh man, it's so much fun. It's a totally different experience too, especially like going out. I mean, when I first started, it'd be like, if you wanted to go shoot, first off, you couldn't unless you couldn't really practice the same way back then unless you kind of like had your own hand thrown traps. Because you couldn't just like you're with a trapper, you'd go out with a trapper and then you're going through the course with them. And a lot of times because there's so many trappers, you have to group up with other people that are there. And there'd be so often that you'd show up to the club and, you're wanting to go out to shoot, but they don't have any trappers. So you got to wait for a group to get off the course. And then you go out with a guy. And, it was just so cool. The different things you could do. And it's way more of a social experience. Takes a lot longer. You end up walking the course and, you could do cool. I mean, the types of targets you can throw, God dang. And I'm telling you what, there's not a trap that is made today that can throw one as fast as one of those things could. God dang.
Oh yeah. Those,
especially a Batu.
Oh my God.
Probably the best Batus ever came off a handset trap.
They were freaking awesome.
Yes. I love how David, I'm going to go back to the comments here real quick. I love how David skipped past this one to get to the why no love for 7/8 ounce.
Where?
Todd Simonson said, when David said about the rose gold, it made me remember the meme of Brandon Powell and Jasper Copeland that said Parazzi ejector versus game bore.
I didn't see that.
You really ought to spend some time with your gun, David.
It's really not my ejector or my shell. It's how much I've shot my gun and I've worn my chamber out, that the inside diameter of my chamber is like, we just lost Braxton. The inside diameter of my chamber is like literally probably about a 0.5 mil wider than the inside diameter of down to the depth of where my brass is. So then when I shoot, the brass expands and the shell gets stuck. He's coming back. I'll add him.
There he is. Lost your Brax.
He snuck in a few slices of pizza. Okay, I'm having Wi-Fi issues. Oh man,
pizza! It is missing a few bites out of it.
There you go.
It's still sitting there.
Is it weird? Is my color blindness really messing with me, or is this not the normal? Does the camera make this a different color? This is supposed to be blue.
I see blue.
Really?
Yeah.
It looks like.
Yeah.
Oh, really? That's weird.
We had a comment here. It says Kakusing in Pennsylvania throws mostly handset targets on Sundays, or did a few years back. I'm telling you, and we had another guy ask when you're opening another club, David, but if we have an opportunity to do this, I think it'd be a lot of fun. I know it'd be a small event, but, and you know what sucks is I just sold 8 handset traps when we sold the farm.
What? You had 8 of them?
8 of them, yeah. I even had one that it was a dual. It looked like a dual rabbit. So in other words, you'd sit in it and the arms cocked this way back to you. And it was really cool because they had fingers on them that were spring loaded. You can adjust with wing nuts.
Mm-hmm.
So you could take one of them, put a standard clay in there, and throw a perfect chandelle, and the other one you'd load with a rabbit. And it was just, I don't know. We had that, and then we had a bunch of sporter clutch traps. I mean, they were 3/4 cock. And a couple of them had the dual anodized arms on it.
Yeah.
And that was really cool because if you had 2 guys, if you wanted to do something fun for kind of like a flurry, you could take a 60 millimeter and then put a 108 over top of it on both arms and have 2 guys shooting it. That was a riot because then you got 4 targets coming out. And you know what I'm talking about on those nesting pairs when you had that 60 underneath of it?
Yeah.
That little sun gun would shoot out in front and it'd slow way down. The 108 would go by it and your eyes are going like this. And,
I like when they're hitting off each other and they're like flying through the air like this and they're like bouncing and going back up. You're like, Jesus.
Yeah. How many times did you think you were going to clubhouse them only to
You can't hit them both. Maybe that's why we need to shoot ounce in the eighth.
Oh man, I'm jumping all over here. Man, a lot of people are talking about.
I want to go. What's that?
A lot of people are talking about clubs that still throw them.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a couple clubs that still do. They're mainly up in the Northeast. Yeah.
Wow, I'm having a hard time reading all this and keeping up with everybody. I apologize.
I like the conversation that's going on between John Hill and Duke Durham. It's hilarious.
Fill us in, David.
They're talking about like that, they initially started off by saying that they went to the tournaments for the steak dinner and the t-shirts, but now they're I asked them, I was like, what gauge fork and knife do you recommend for the steak dinners? And then I asked that in the chat, and they said, what did he say? Something about barehanded like our founding fathers intended. I was like, now we're talking. And then Duke goes, 4 gauge. You don't bring a small gauge fork to a large gauge steak like Mike cooks at Hunter's Point. And then it keeps going on, and then they start talking about this guy named Rusty and how the bastard, he goes, John hates it if Rusty shows up though. That boy can eat. And he goes, yeah, Rusty beats me on the course and the table. This is a funny conversation.
Oh man, Braxton, to go back to what we were talking about, you said you switched from ounce and eighth to 1 ounce. Was it mainly the recoil, or did you just felt you had the better control, like what David was saying?
Yeah, so the control was the biggest part. This year I've been struggling with quick true pairs or bang bang true pairs.
Yeah,
and that ounce and eighth just. From the first shot to the second shot was always throwing me off. So, and I just made that switch recent. shooting a lot of 1 ounce anyways, and that's what I was practicing with. And the Open, Ohio State, and even this weekend here at the Northeast, that's all I'm shooting is 1 ounce.
Mm.
You're fixed choke barrel, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Tight.
Is he breaking up? Are you, Jason? Is he breaking up for you too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I missed.
Can you say that again, Braxton? I don't think we heard you. It looked like you froze.
Yeah. I shoot fixed, tight and tight.
Okay.
See, and you don't have your barrels ported either, do you?
I do not. No.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I mean, I really feel there's a lot to that, and I'm not just trying to play salesman for Rhino, but I've shot ported guns before that didn't do what this porting does, and I don't know. I mean, to me it really worked, and Chad felt a difference. Sean felt a difference. Everybody I've talked into perforating their barrels with Rhino porting, I've felt a difference. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm just lucky I can get away with it. I still can't shoot as good as you guys, so it doesn't matter. But
I think porting, I mean, from a scientific approach and not a marketing approach, the reason why it's debated whether or not it works is because it doesn't. I haven't done the math to know the effect of it on the direction that it should influence it. But I can tell you that it's not, if your gun doesn't have vertical recoil, you're not going to feel a difference in porting, because the porting doesn't, I mean, they do talk about, specifically cut angles that the gas will push the gun forward and down and stuff like that. It's not going to make that much of a difference. You're mainly going to have a difference in the vertical direction. And so if your gun doesn't recoil vertically, and that is not an issue of the gun, that is mainly a proponent of the fit of your stock. So if your stock, if the stock that is made to fit you well has a lot of drop from nose to heel, then you're going to have, let's say if the pitch is, more negative, you're going, or depending on your body style, pitch and drop hugely influence vertical recoil of the gun. So, then your gun, if you've got a lot of that, it's going to move up when you shoot, and you will notice a difference in porting if that is the case. If it doesn't do that, you probably won't. But that I can tell you, I started off not being a believer. I thought porting was all BS. And I had an instance in a lesson where, I was teaching a guy, and I was like so confused why it seemed like he was having this weird flinch on every single shot, and that I have never seen before. He just got a new barrels, and then I went to try to shoot his gun to explain to him to show him what it was looking like. And when I shot the gun, it jumped up in the air to me. And I had given lessons to him before, prior to him getting these different barrels on it. He had a Krieghoff. I think he initially had a Parkour barrel, and then he switched to what do they call it? What's the Krieghoff barrels called? The Sporter barrels or Super Sport? Not the raised rib, but the separated barrels, whatever they are.
Sporter.
Yeah, the Sporter barrels. So so he was shooting one of those, and just that change, I don't know why it changed it, but maybe it was just a weird set of barrels. And I mean, it literally, I was like, how the heck? Maybe, never mind. Maybe it's not you, Ross. So I didn't know how to fix it. And I have video evidence, Jason, to prove this, because I couldn't believe it. I called Tommy Browning, and I was like, hey man, what, can you bring your gun down here, because he has the same length barrels as your gun, and I want to put your barrels on his gun to see if it's these barrels, because previously he didn't do this. So he has the same barrels, same length, everything. So we put his barrels on Ross's gun, and they worked, and they fit. We shot. There was no vertical recoil. And Tommy goes, I swear it's supporting. I'm telling you, it's supporting. I'm like, that's such BS. It's not true. He's like, no, I'm telling you, it's supporting. So we basically made the decision. I was like, well, if you want Ross after dinner, because he was staying the night at the place, I was like, I'll drive up and drop your barrels off, have them ported, and then bring them back, and you can use them in the morning. So we did that. And I took slow motion video in my camera that I'm using right now. There was a noticeable difference. Me shooting it from day to day, same ammo, massively noticeable difference.
It works, dude. For me, it works. So,
yeah, if I got my gun ported, it wouldn't make a difference. I don't have any vertical movement in the gun, but I, there are some guns. Obviously, I've experienced. I'm not saying I'm giving people zero bullshit, because I would, if you asked me if porting was real prior to having that experience, I would have told you it was all BS.
Real quick, do want to invite everybody to the Dead Pair Blast in Vero Beach, first week of December. It'll be here before you know it. Trying to con David and Braxton here into coming down. I think it'd be a really good time. I know it's a little bit expensive, but there's a lot of money back to class. There's $100 back to class in the main, and we've got money back to class in FETAS, the prelim, and the super sporting. So that'd be a good time. And we talked a lot about target setting tonight. Sean and I are setting targets. If I know David's coming, it'll be about 10 stations incoming crows.
I got those figured out now. I haven't told you what my hard target is, so that's on purpose.
Oh, you talk to enough people, I can figure it out.
Oh, it ain't happening. Braxton, what do you? Can I want to ask you a question. What's your opinion on the? And maybe this was talked about, but in the very beginning of everything, I was trying to make sure everything was good, and I was not really able to pay attention at all. But I want to know what your thought is on, like, not specifically the U.S. Open, not specifically Ohio State, but just like the trend in general of, this back and forth argument between the difficulty of major tournament birds either getting harder or getting easier, and no one really being able to make up their mind. And like, what's your overall opinion on, like, what direction should we be going in? Are there mistakes being made? What's the impact of that to the sport in on either sides of it, like the participants and then also the pros? Like, what do you think? Was that question already asked?
Just personally, the last couple of championships, competitively, I think that's the direction that we need to be in to determine champions.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the general public, the lower class shooters, as far as what it's doing to the sport, that's hurting the sport.
Yeah. And how about I would agree with you, because I think as a coach, I don't think there's really anybody in the industry that is able to sit down with people that spend their money in this game more than the guys that coach it, and we sit down with them and we talk about what they're struggling with, and we figure out, every lesson I have, I try to start with a conversation to get a feel for, someone comes to a lesson and they say, oh, I want to work on X, Y, Z. Well, half the time, the thing that they think is actually the thing they need to work on isn't the thing they need to work on. So you kind of generally need to, really get a feel for how their tournaments are going and what they're experiencing and that kind of stuff. And generally in those conversations, and especially with new students, you get a real feel for, what their perception is on the game or the experience of these new tournaments that they're going to and stuff like that. And I agree with you that it is hurting the participation in the sport in those major tournaments. So then my follow-up question would be, as somebody whose family runs and operates a club and has in the past, but not really a club that had, not because You guys are probably big enough to have a regional, right?
We would be maxed out.
Yeah.
We would be pretty maxed out.
Yeah.
I think we could expand, and I think we probably could put one on.
Yeah.
But it would be tight.
Yeah. Okay, so if being someone that is in that position, talk to me like from a club standpoint, what your opinion is on this. Like, do you think it's a bad idea? Well, here would be a better way for me to, I'm just going to give you my opinion. I don't see why the regionals, U.S. Open, World Championship, and National Championships are important for people to go to other than guys like us. And I think that the NSCA marketing those shoots as the place to spend your money at is hurting the growth of the sport and is hurting clubs like your club. Because if there are guys that are local to you, or maybe let's say a 3-hour drive to your place, and you know, they hear everywhere they got to go to the U.S. Open, or they got to go to the regional, or they got to go to the national championship, they're going to bypass going to a few of the signature shoots that you have to spend the money to go to those shoots. And those shoots are the same experience everywhere you go. I mean, we've now been doing them for 11 years of regional championships. And ever since the first one, they've been exactly the same. It's the same events. It's the same 7 clubs. It's the same people that are there competing. You know, I mean, the fact that we just had the World Championship and then a few months later, a U.S. Open, and you know, like everybody that was at the World Championship was at the U.S. Open. And then everybody that was at the U.S. Open is going to be basically at Hopkins. Everybody it's like, it's the same pros. It's the same non-pros that are there, the same hobbyists. It's the same thing. And it's my opinion that, and I think personally, like, is it a cool experience to go to a shoot like that as a newer shooter? Yeah. But one time, because every time you go after that, it's the same thing. And I can tell you, and because there's a lot of people now that shoot that they weren't shooting 15, 20 years ago like we were. And man, I freaking miss the East Coast Championship. I miss the Great Eastern Lobster Classic. I miss the Learjet Classic. I miss the signature shoots. They're still there, but we can't go to them because the schedule is filled with everything else. And when you do it like that, and when you incentivize people to be like, yeah, I want one-time experience of going to a U.S. Open, and, you know, but I want to spend my money in these, you know, I'll pick a few local shoots to go to, or in my regional area. I think that if you disincentivize who the hell cares about having 2,600 people at the national championship? We should have 26 people at the national championship, you know, and have all those people spend more money going to smaller shoots and the smaller clubs and help the local areas. I mean, have you guys seen over the years, you know, I mean, what is the East Coast Championship numbers now versus 15 years ago?
15 years ago, it's actually gone up, but in the 10 or 11 years that we've done it, probably in the last 7 years, we stay between 3 to 350.
Yeah.
And we cannot get over that 350.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. There's so many shoots now, and so many major shoots pushed together in the same schedule with all these shoots that we hear it all the time. Our shoots the weekend before, the weekend after this major shoot, and people are picking and choosing which ones to go to.
Yeah. I mean, someone made a comment to me, you know, I think maybe Jason and I talked about it on the phone. I mean, you know, it was $3,200 for some guy. Someone made a comment, you know, it was $3,200 for him to go to the U.S. Open. Well, I can tell you that I have students that I mean, I know this because they'll text me. They'll $3,200 to go to the U.S. Open is essentially 30 tournaments at their local club.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's 3 years of tournaments, of monthly tournaments at their local club that they you know, like they're not going to go to the monthly tournaments so that they can save money to go to a U.S. Open. And while that's a great thing to try to achieve to do, and anybody should do what they want to do, I just think that the sport is kind of directing people the wrong way. And I can tell you that it's not clubs that can host U.S. Opens and regional championships that support our game. It's the clubs like your club and the smaller clubs. I mean, you guys are pretty. I literally, before you guys own that, I basically learned to shoot at your club. I would say 80% of my lessons I've ever had with Wendell as a kid were there. I learned to set targets at your club from Chuck. He used to teach me how to set birds there. You know, that's an awesome place. But it's even in clubs even smaller than that. Literally, the local club that is, when you think, what's my home club? That's the club that is being hurt by the NSCA doing that. And I just don't understand what's so bad about saying, like, okay, you know what? Instead of, we're going to make the entry fee to the U.S. Open $5,000. You know, main event, $5,000 entry. Kill the participation for that. But if the clubs want to make the money, then, you know, they don't need to have that many people sign up to make, you know, if they're going to charge $5,000 for it. And it's not going to disincentivize it's not going to be like you have to qualify. You can still do it if you want to do it. But you're not going to have all the people going there. And I would love to find a way to funnel more money to allow the non-major clubs to grow. And I think that would grow the participation in the sport. At the end of the day, I started this game because I found out that there was a zone and state championship 20 minutes from my house. I wouldn't have done it if I had to travel to the other side of the country. You know, do you, as a club owner, do you see that same thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I mean, you brought up the zone shoots. There used to be, what, seven zones?
I think so. Or was there 9? Maybe 9.
9 zones?
I don't know.
I mean, I remember growing up, Hunters Point used to host zone shoots.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Virginia, Old Forge used to hold zone shoots. Since we've gone to regions between South Carolina, or I exclude South Carolina because of backwoods, and Rocky Creek, but North Carolina, Virginia, even Tennessee, like those 3 states just in my area. Tennessee's had 2 regionals, North Carolina's had 1, Virginia hasn't had 1.
Yeah.
And that's been the last 12 years.
Yep.
12 years between those 3 states, there's been 3 regionals, 2 of them in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And back then, they used to hold zone shoots
all over
every other year, every 2 years.
Yeah.
All over the place.
You'd get to actually have a flavorful schedule, you know, every year.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back and look at my NSCA history, up until 2000, you know, for 15 years up until 2013 or whatever, when the first regional was here, 2013 or 2011, literally every year looks different. Different names of shoots, mm-hmm. different clubs, a completely different schedule. Now, literally every year for the past 11 years looks exactly the same. And, you know, I think that people don't understand. There's a couple things. These bigger shoots are nowhere close to being as good as the smaller shoots. They're nowhere close. They're better because they're bigger. Like, all that is different is that there are more people there, and so there's more targets to shoot because of it. But the quality cannot be the same. You, as running a club, if you have 2,600 people on your property and you have however many total registered targets that you have to shoot, you have to maximize the use of your property to be as efficient as possible. The courses are going to be on straight roads right off the road. Everything's going to be crammed next to each other. You have to do it differently. At the smaller shoots, the attention to detail is way better, and that's not criticizing the big shoots. It's just saying it's impossible at the big shoots because it's so big. You can either have high quality, low volume, or high volume, low quality. That's just the way that it works. And so, the attention to detail is better. The courses are laid out better. They're more intimate. They have a more social feel. How many times people say that Nationals is so big that they never really saw anybody there? That's not, it's not the same. I really miss that, and I hope that someday, hopefully, something happens to bring that back.
I started shooting in the mid-'90s, so everything was small shoots, and I miss those shoots for a host of reasons that. I shot with my dad. I shot with my buddies at local clubs, and it was when you went to a tournament, it was just a lot of fun. I have different enjoyment in the tournaments now. Everything's changed. Look, you're talking 30 years ago. Everything has completely changed, and I find enjoyment in different things now at the clubs and at the shoots. So I will agree that that's the one thing I will credit to Anthony and Eminem is it feels more intimate there, even when it is a bigger shoot. I said that about the World Sporting, as big as that place is and spread out as many people as there. It felt like it still had that smaller shoot feel to it. But, then you go to Northbrook and it's equally as big, if not bigger. And everything was just so spread out. It's a 20-minute golf cart ride. From the clubhouse around to, just past Task or Super Sporting or whatever. And, like you said, there's people there that you never got to see. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I do miss that intimacy, if you will, So, but I do like the smaller shoots. And that's, maybe that's the reason why. Not trying to be a salesman, but maybe that's the reason why Sean and I had so much fun at the Dead Pair Blast last year, or maybe that's what makes the night shoot at Cardinals so much fun, because it's a small group of people.
Braxton, you probably go to the one at the Meadows, right? If you go to one at all.
I haven't been to it.
Have you ever been to a night shoot before?
I have not.
Oh my God! Can we recruit you to come up to Ohio in the middle of the winter and shoot at night?
I don't know, is it during hunting season?
Yeah, kind of. What are the days? I don't even know what the dates are. It's the most fun shoot ever. I show up in my duck camo and I shoot my duck gun, and then there's burn barrels at every station. You're like roasting marshmallows while you shoot in the middle of the night, and hopefully there's a blizzard because you got like all the white snow and the lights. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's one of those shoots. Even the one in the Meadows, that's one of the ones like I want to put on the schedule.
Yeah, that's it. It sucks because all the stuff that I want to put on the schedule is something that nobody, it's like it's not good for my career, so to speak. Like I would gladly pass up a regional to go to like a shoot at Rock Mountain in Seattle or a shoot at a Big Sky in Montana, but who cares what, no one's going to even know the name of those shoots, but it would be so much of a better event, man.
Well, and Sean and I, we constantly get invited by clubs to come out, and man, I'd so love to do it. And it just seems like even we've got stuck in the trap of going to the regionals, US Open and all that stuff, because, the podcast people, that's what people want to hear from, right? Is the larger shoots and the big, the big name shooters. So I would love to be able to just say, you know what, next year we're doing nothing but signature shoots. That's all I'm going to, and go to, a shoot like Braxton's, East Coast Championship and
that's a really fun
Diamond
shoot
stuff. You know what I mean? Those type of shoots, I would love to be able to do that. The problem is we have sponsors and we have obligations, and it's kind of hard to get away from going to the large shoots. I mean, I would love to be able to say, yeah, people are just as interested in a podcast from, I'm just making up, John Smith and Mary Jane at, some local shoot. But unfortunately, that's not the case. They want to hear from the bigger shooters. They want to know, what shells Braxton's shooting.
Yeah, we're important, Jason. Damn it.
I said Braxton, not David.
Shit.
Yeah. You just stuck the foot in your mouth there,
Oh,
David.
man.
So, but no, I mean, that's who people want to hear from, right? And that's our job as a podcast, is to bring that information to people. I agree with you, David. I love the intimacy of a small shoot. It's just so much fun. It feels like you're having a party in your backyard almost, compared to going to a big concert.
Yeah.
So, hey, we did have one quick question come in.
George Millsap is here. What's up, George? Yeah, the Iron Clay 150 at South Cuyahoga. It was the first tournament I ever set targets for. George, I hope your shop's going well.
Oh, this one was on Facebook. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Maxine said, we hear and discuss with other shooters about chokes. Some change at almost each station. Some put the same all the way around, or put the same all day. So what are your suggestions, and what is your best tip on that? Well, I will tell you this much right now before either one of these two yahoos can answer. They both have fixed chokes, so they're the wrong people to ask.
Yeah.
As somebody that has chokes, honestly, unless it's something stupid close or stupid far, I don't change, but that's just me, and I suck. So, I will give credit to a well-known coach and shooter. I don't know if he wants me to bring up his name or not, but he's won championships by changing chokes, and he's won championships by leaving the same chokes in the gun all the way around the course. I think it's a matter of what you're confident in, and I know that these two guys are going to say you should spend the time making a plan and executing your plan more than worrying about your chokes. I've hit targets. I intentionally set up, and we even scoped it out and even wheeled it out because we weren't sure. And it was 92 yards, Shondell, and we were experimenting with chokes. And I hit it and crushed it with everything from a 7 thousandths to a 22 thousandths. So, I think if the barrel's in the right spot when the gun goes off, it doesn't really matter what chokes are in your gun. But I would say, fine, like myself, I'm stuck on 17 thousandths. I absolutely love it. And I run with it. And I've hit stuff just as hard at distance as some of the people that are running 25 thousandths. So I think it's what you're confident in. Please go on, David. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, no, to answer that question quickly, my answer is that, I shoot fixed chokes, and so does Braxton. It would be pretty easy to assume I would just say that it doesn't matter. But my real answer is that if you think that it matters, then it matters. And I literally mean that, because if it influences, if not changing it makes you literally just think about it, not even just lose confidence in what you're using, but if you can't get the thought out of your head of like, I don't have the right chokes, then you need to change it. The goal is to just be confident. You want to make it to where when you go to pull the trigger, you don't think that there's something that you could be doing better. That's the best answer. But the comment that I got excited for, which is cool, a really good idea, and it's not on the screen anymore, but it's somewhere else. It was Country Ninja said, we need to get Score Chaser to have a category for signature shoots. How cool would that be? Like, not just normal monthly shoots, but like you could actually, it would specifically filter out like unique shoots that are a cool experience. That'd be a great idea.
That would be a great idea. That would be cool. I'll have to bring that up to Casey, see if that's something. I'm sure it wouldn't be hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to make it where, I think maybe a club can apply to have one shoot be that for them.
Yeah.
Because otherwise everyone's just going to all put it in there.
Well, we missed the big guy tonight. He's still moving, so unfortunately he couldn't join us. But I do have a podcast scheduled with him tomorrow night, so that'll be coming out soon. It's going to be a pretty interesting podcast. So, Braxton, any closing thoughts, bud?
Not that I can think of. I enjoyed it. I still got this pizza over here.
David, what about you, bud?
No, not much. Just always fun. Braxton, good. Are you in around Hopkins right now?
Yeah, I'm already up here.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, good luck this week. I'm staying home because I got way too much work to do. Man, I've been on the road for so long. How long have you been on the road? It had to have been longer than me because I couldn't. You went straight from the Open to Ohio and then straight to Maryland, I'm assuming.
I think, what month are we in?
A good question. August?
August. I think since May, I've been home maybe 3.5 weeks.
Yeah.
3.5, maybe. Probably since May.
That's
July, August. Yeah. I've been home maybe at most 3-4 weeks.
Yeah.
At most in all of May. Actually, April to May.
Yeah, it's been since April. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting topic. I brought that up to Brandon Powell at the Ohio State shoot. I said, I'm surprised more people didn't come from the Open over to Ohio for this shoot. And he said, man, he goes, we have been on the road since the last week of January.
Yeah. I don't think that was good scheduling, to be honest.
Well, like he made a good point. You take all the big blast shoots that are down in Florida, and then they slowly trickle north, and then all the regionals start, the U.S. Open, and now we've had 2 world championships in our country this year on top of the normal schedule that they have. It's just
it's too much, man.
It is.
It's too much.
But it's the one cool thing about it is it's good for the sport because there's plenty of opportunities to go to a big shoot this year if you wanted to do that.
Yeah.
If you wanted to experience that and you're a lower class shooter and you've never done it, you had 2 world championships in this country this year, in addition to all the normal regionals and U.S. Opens that we normally have. So that's been cool for it. But, man, for you guys that travel the circuit and never miss a shoot, it's been a lot. I mean, it's been a lot for me, and I didn't go to all of them. So,
yeah. I mean, throw on top of the shoots, teaching for weeks at a time, at different places. You're literally never home. I don't even know why I rent a house, it was just a last minute thing. I needed to have a place to put all my stuff when I moved out. But it's like I'm literally never here. Every time I'm here, I'm like, well, I wonder what, is broken this time. And the, I mean, seriously. And, it's like, it's insane. I really, it's what frustrates me about the whole thing because really, I mean, the fact that Ohio got over 300 shooters is amazing to me because, I mean, with all the tournaments that people are spending money to go to, I mean,
300.
I'm saying they shouldn't. I know. I'm saying they shouldn't have even got over 300.
Oh yeah, it was 5. I think it was. Oh man, I'm gonna have to look it up. It was like 560 something.
But it wasn't last year at over 600.
No,
it wasn't.
No.
Oh.
No, we had like. You'd have to ask Jake. I think we had like 10 more people than we had last year. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just think the schedule's too busy, and it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, we could stay on here all night, but that's what makes it cool. We can come back again next week. So, thank you, Braxton. Appreciate it. Thank you to Chad if he's still listening or wherever he's at. I think he said he had to go to a movie. David, thank you. Appreciate all your help. Appreciate you guys filling in for the big guy that couldn't make it, Mr. Large and in charge himself. But hey, we tell everybody every week, take someone new shooting, take them to a tournament, get out there, introduce them to the sport, show them how much fun this is. I know we got guys like David that can complain about it a lot, but it really is a good sport, and there's a lot of good.
It's a great sport.
And
I want more people to do it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the great friends like these two yahoos that I got on here with me. So I think Tommy Browning said it best, David, that strangers in sporting clays, only friends you haven't met yet. So
yeah,
I think that was well said. But hey, everyone, until next week, we really appreciate y'all and can't wait to see y'all back here on the Dead Pair Podcast.
We'll see you next time on the Dead Pair Podcast.
The Dead Pair. The Dead Pair Podcast is brought to you by Elite Shotguns and Vero Beach Clay Shooting Sports and is fueled by Fiocchi USA. The Dead Pair theme song was written, arranged, and produced by Toby Tomplay. Big thanks to the following sponsors: RE Ranger, Odo Pro Technologies, Rhino Chokes, Score Chaser, Taconic Distillery, and Atlas Trap Company.